I'm going! I'm going! I closed it went off and I couldn't
I've no idea. Oh shit, yeah, we didn't do that. Yeah. I don't know if I'll be sitting for it too. I'm not on shit. Him. Where's my word?
This lad. I came home when I was 2.
By like 2
Not bigger, but it's wider.
terrible to do with. You're lying. Yeah.
I'm halfway through it. I'm out of grade 4.
When did you find out about it?
So, these are your results from yesterday. Average mark, 72. Anyone got any reflection on that? Does anyone think 72 is good? Yeah. For an open book examination, multiple choice. Hmm?
It's our first one.
What, your first test ever?
No, but it's certain module it's our first.
Good job, see. I don't know. Okay, so this is the thing. The average mark is 72. And if you've got, let's say, below 75, okay, so all those people there, you can't do this yet. You have an assignment due in on November the 2nd. Is that right? With me? Yeah? You've got to learn to do it by then. Because you've done an examination on this. You have all access to the guide for this in order to do the examination. You should be able now to do it. Okay? If you got below 75, I am telling you now, you need to do 2 things. One, you need to go back over that guide immediately. Not even for my assignment, but for the one you've got coming up in film studies with Joanna, because she will absolutely eviscerate you if you make any mistakes on referencing. 2, this goes for everyone. Because nobody got 100%, this goes for everyone. Every assignment you do, you need to have that guide open. when you write the assignment. You cannot get away from this. If you decide not to do that, and you make errors in referencing, then you will be deducted marks accordingly in every assignment you have. Is everyone clear? I cannot make it any clearer. Maybe it hasn't sunk in yet why referencing is important. So let me clarify in a way that I probably haven't clarified before. Every piece of work that you do at university is an academic piece of work. Referencing is a part of academic pieces of work. If you don't reference properly, or don't reference at all, you are not doing academic work. Therefore, you cannot get a good mark for an academic piece of work without your referencing being correct. Learn the rules. But if you're not sure, have the damn thing open next to you as you're writing this on. Look it up. It will take you, what, 5 seconds? It's not an imposition. If you were in a seminar with me last week, you would have had some tips about how to do this incredibly quickly without looking stuff up. If anyone wants to ask me questions about how to do that, I'm more than happy to help you. 5% below the group last year. I don't know if that's good or bad, to be honest. Okay, you're probably not as dumb as those guys, so you know, maybe this doesn't work. Okay, does anyone have any questions about tests today? No? I was asked earlier, can you have the correct answers? Just thinking about that quickly, I think if you click back on the test, it will give you them. It will give you your performance, what you got right and what wrong. You just need to click back onto it, I think. If that doesn't work, then I can set it so that will happen if you do want to go back and look at what you had right and what you didn't have right and what you need to look at. It's a 2-second job. I know there's a couple of people who haven't, for various reasons, haven't been able to do it yet, so I'm sure they will as time goes on. Okay. Third
section is going to take you through some fundamental principles of academic
Holy
writing.
crap!
Talk you through what your lecturers are going to be expecting from your essays, and hopefully
That's
show you
Ben.
the process
That's awesome!
to use in order to achieve them. Now,
So,
before we begin, I'd just like you to do a very quick exercise.
there we go. Ben is from the Centre for Academic Success. So Ben would usually do this session with you guys, but unfortunately the Centre for Academic Success is absolutely swamped this year. So Ben has sent me some stuff over to go through what they do with academic practice and writing. But I want to change the focus of what Ben does a little bit, because Ben pitches it, I don't want to say at the bottom, but Ben pitches it as if you don't know what you're doing. Okay? I'm going to give you all a bit of credit that you do know what you're doing, because you wouldn't be here otherwise unless you knew how to do certain things in the first instance. So I'm going to try and pitch it a little bit higher than Ben does, in order for it to be around how you get up those grades rather than trying to be here. Okay, I think that's fair to pitch this in that way. So in the module handbook, I've called it How to Get a First Class Degree. And I kind of mean it in that sense. What I want you to take away from today is, and this is the last thing we do about skills and all that crap, because next week we're on to actual theory. But what I want you to take away from today is a model of how in January you can present work to me when I'm sitting down to mark your essays in January, and it's like, right, I have got to give you 70 plus. I have no choice. You do this, you do these things, that is what I have to do. Please do that in January as well, because it makes my life so much easier. Can anyone, please start from my position for a second. What do you think is easier to mark? Good or bad work?
Good.
Why?
Because there's not much, there's not anything wrong to mark down or to correct.
Yeah. When something's good, I don't have to stop to make points on it. I don't have to make suggestions about how it can improve. I don't have to highlight mistakes. I'm basically in a way better mood when something's good. When it's bad, it's double, triple the work. And the frustrating thing with that is very often that even when it's bad, the first thing people want to do when they get a bad grade is avoid the feedback. So I spend like loads of time telling you how to improve, and then it never gets read anyway, because people don't want to confront that they've done poorly. So do well in the first place, everyone's happy, including me, because I've got KPIs for this module, and if everyone does well, I can go into Richard's office and be like, fuck you, my KPIs are awesome, give me a pay rise. And he won't do that. But it would be nice for me to be able to do that. So, really, I want you...
So no talking,
fuck off
so,
then.
for example, text message, somebody communicating with a very appropriate language.
That's going to fix Ben's ass for this time being. First point before you do anything with any assignment is find out who's marking it. Okay? So what's the first point you do? Fucking hell. Slow, slow. I'm going to ask you again. What is the first thing you do with any assignment? Thank you. Find out who's marking it. How do you find that out? There's a clue in previous lectures. Well, yeah, module handbook. That'd be the place to look. It'll tell you. It'll tell you who the module convener is. That's the person who's marking your assignment. So, know who the reader of this assignment is. You have 3 module conveners this semester. Me, Elena, and Joanna. Do we have different expectations? Yeah, we do. Listen to what each of us says before assignments. We've all set out guidelines for every assignment that you will be doing. Read them. Joanna's are really exacting. She makes it very clear what she's expecting from her essay. And you get a poor mark for Joanna if you don't meet those things. I make it extremely clear what I am expecting from every piece of work. I even give you a spreadsheet that tells you if you achieve this, this is the mark you'll get. They're all on Canvas. Everything is there, but know who is actually going to be marking this work. That is the first point. You might think, well, you're all the same. No, we're not. We really aren't. I have different expectations to the others, and you have to get used to this. Any of you doing a journalism degree, this should be internalised right from now. If you're doing PR, internalise it now. Different audiences, different expectations. That goes down to the granular individual that you are targeting. In MS-100, you need to impress me. I have certain expectations of what impresses. Like flawless referencing. Joanna shares that too. I have expectations about accuracy when you're discussing theory, for example. I have expectations with regards to how an argument is set out in your essay. I'll come to that shortly, about how that should be done. So, always know your reader. Now, you'll have other assignments through your degree where the reader is going to be different. It could be your peers, it could be a non-academic audience, and so on. And therefore, your writing will vary accordingly. And again, you should be given guidelines as to how that actually works. So always think, if it's this piece of shit, there are certain expectations that you're going to have to meet. But those expectations will always be given to you. And where do you find those expectations? Thank you. Are we getting there now? Everything in the module now, Jesus. Okay. Always make assumptions about what you're expected to do. You know me. You might not think you know me, but believe me, I'm a very shallow individual. This is it. Okay? You pretty much know everything at this point. What will impress him? Always be asking that question. Joanna, what films does she want me to talk about? Yeah? Does Joanna like Marvel? Do not go there. Do not go there. Do not go Star Wars. She will not appreciate this shit. I will not appreciate it, although I will ask you a question about it, expecting you to rip into it. Because if you defend that shit, you're in big trouble. So, always, there are assumptions that you can make about the person. What do we know about university lecturers? They are probably well educated. No, I don't fit with all people, but yeah, it's a good assumption to make. We are busy. There are apparently 100 plus students enrolled on this module. All of you will be producing a 2,000 word essay. That means there's 200,000 words that I've got to read in a 3-week window. Now, I've other things to do in that window as well, not least, drinking, going out, etc. I'm busy. Make it easy. Always make your work easy for me to mark. Can anyone tell me how you do that, first of all? There are a couple of steps for making work easy, but how can you start?
Accurate referencing.
He's getting there, accurate referencing to black. Anything else?
Review the module handbook.
The answers to this are in the module handbook, funnily enough. Who would have thunk it? Let's be more specific. Okay, all marking is done on a screen. Okay? Now, I don't wear these for effect. I am literally blind. First thing, double space your work. Write it down. Take a note of that. Double space your work. Marking on a screen is incredibly difficult. Leave a space between so I can actually read it properly. You're reading a newspaper website, right? Say you pull up an article on the Times. They do not single space, because they know reading on a screen is very, very difficult for people. Therefore, they leave adequate space between each line so you can differentiate the message on each line that's being given. Some students do not internalize this, and they hand in something which is like, and I can't read it. Genuinely, can't read it. It's too difficult for me. Bad mood, bad mark. Second thing, do not use anything under 12-point font. In fact, just use 12-point font. That's enough for me. Anything over is a bit like you're shouting. And that's cool, but, So double space, 12 points. Either use Arial or Calibri or Times New Roman. Don't be tempted to use anything funky. If you hand in something in Comic Sans, you fail automatically. These are the first things for making something easy. Easier it is to comprehend on our side, the easier it is to give you a mark which is commensurate with the quality of your work. The rest of the stuff comes afterwards, but the referencing is important, the clarity of what you present is also important. I give a list of essay titles, which means I mark a lot of the same thing. How would you make yours stand out then? Any ideas? How to make an essay stand out?
The title and introduction.
Alright, a good introduction would be a really good start. Yeah. Okay. Okay. These are good examples. How could you write a good, let's say we're doing something on film genre. How could you make a good introduction? How could you start with something that stands out from the rest? That's good. So, you're writing an essay about a film. When you start with a quote from the film, that contextualizes what the film is about and what your essay is going to be about. Films have lines. Films have information in them. You might well be doing an essay perhaps on Marshall McLuhan for me. Well, start by something from Marshall McLuhan. Son of a bitch wrote like 40 books. There's lots to use. Start it by showing a couple of different things. One, that you know what the essay's about. Two, that you know the topic area really well, because you can pick something out relevant to it. And three, that you've got a bit of imagination. You know, that this isn't going to be run-of-the-mill stuff. Some of the best essays start with jokes. Students are petrified by making jokes in essays, because it's not formal. What? What are you talking about? I make jokes in my stuff all the time. They're not very good, but I make them. So, you know, think about how yours can stand out. We are extremely learned in the subject. I never need you to student-splain me the topic. Okay? I know the topic already. I've been teaching it for years and years and years. I have written about it. I am writing a textbook for students on it right now. I don't need you to do that. Okay? What I need you to do is spend less time on describing and more time on answering the damn question. That is very important. I do not need my hand held through Marxist theory. I was doing Marxist theory before nearly everyone in this room was born. So, you know, hold back on that shit. I don't need it. And I'm actually interested in your ideas. The best essays to mark, not always the most successful essays, I will give that, but the best essays to mark have your ideas in it. But I've already been through what that means. Your ideas should be supported by academic research. But I want to see every year, especially in first year essays, really bland, not really trying to answer the question very much, just trying to get a grade. That's dull. At least have a go at putting across your position. There's plenty of evidence to support your position, I can guarantee it. Positions aren't that wild, you're not that original. You might well get there, and that'd be great. I mean, one or two of you in the room are probably certifiable insane as well, and you'll come up with some real batshit stuff. Try and tone that down, because that rarely works. But always try and put your ideas across, supported by relevant evidence. Those are the best essays. The bland, just copies everyone else's stuff, that does not work. Well, it does work, you get a grade for it, but you're never going to get very far. So, we are always up here. Any piece of academic work at university level is looking not at if you can remember stuff, not really if you can understand. That's the purpose of this. Your actual assignments are looking to see whether you can apply in order to evaluate and analyse. Creativity, some modules will ask you to create things others won't. Vast majority of undergraduate modules wouldn't work at the top of Bloom's taxonomy in that way. The core stuff here is being able to analyse, breaking concepts up, and evaluating, making judgments on those concepts. Those are the core things. Assignments that do not include those elements, maximum marks 50, because you're not really operating at this level. So, that is really where things should be. These are some of the titles taken from the MS-100 essay titles for this year. Let's have a look. Explain how discourses work to legitimise the ideologies of ruling elites in society with reference to one particular form of media discourse, for example, film discourse or newspaper discourse. Adorno famously claimed all mass culture is identical. Critically evaluate this claim. And what did Marshall McLuhan mean when he stated the medium is the message? Make reference to at least two different answers. What is the key phrase in the top question? Can anyone tell me? Explain. Thank you. Explain. I am asking you explicitly to explain how a discourse legitimizes the ideology of a ruling elite. I'm making it clear. That is the skill I'm testing in that question. You've got to explain to me. You have got to tell me what the process is that media discourse works to legitimize a particular set of ideas. In the second one, what is the key phrase?
Evaluate or critically evaluate.
Critically evaluate, yeah. Critically evaluate. And here is, if you take nothing else away from today, you're going to take this. The word critically means, in any academic context, with reference to academic research. That is what critically means. It is not critical unless you make reference to relevant theory and research. If you don't do that, it is not critically, therefore you don't answer the question, as is posed. This comes up all the time. So, what exactly? I am being critical. So, yeah, you're being critical, but critically in this context means this. So you have to do it in this way. For like 90% of people, this is never an issue, but some people find this a gap to bridge. In the last one, what is the key phrase here? And I do mean phrase rather than words.
Make reference.
No. I can see why, but no. But I'm not going to come down on anyone for that. But
What Marshall
yeah. This is actually fairly straightforward. What did Marshall McLuhan mean? So I'm asking you to assess this statement. I'm sure some of you will have looked at McLuhan and that statement in the past. So, as I highlighted, yeah. Bonus. Underline. That's top animation skill sets. Okay. Why am I labouring under this? Read the question. It's really, really important that you read the question. Literally, when you make your selection of a question, I'm not sure how Joanna does her essay. Does she give you like a block of like 4 or 5 and then another block of 4 or 5? Does anyone know? Does anyone care? Joanna used to like give you like a block of questions for the first 6 weeks of the course or something like that, and then another set of questions for the second 6 weeks of the course. She'll do the same thing, I know that. Okay? The key to answering those questions is always pick out those really important. What type of word are we always looking for? A bit higher level, but they are always a particular type of word. Always pick out the verbs. The verb in a sentence is asking you to do something in this context. When you've got a question, the verb is asking you to perform a certain thing. Always pick out that verb. That will tell you what you are exactly being asked to do. So I'm asking you to explain, I'm asking you to critically evaluate. These are always the keys to understanding what it is that you are being asked to do. Okay. Let's talk about reading next. And an addendum. I know there are people in this room who have never read a book. That's okay. Don't worry about it. I know there are people in this room who, when they graduate in 3 years' time, still won't have read a book. That's okay. Don't worry about it. To live in perpetual ignorance is your choice in a democratic society. Knock yourself out. Go for it. For the rest of us, who are going to engage in this, for those of you who don't intend to read a book ever in your lives, you can switch off for 5 minutes. All right, this is not going to make a lot of sense. Everyone's looking like, is he bitch slapping us or is he being serious? No. Well, 6 in one, half dozen in the other. There's a little bit 50-50 on that. The truth is, I got a master's student this year who first commented in academic mentoring on Monday was, I can't believe I got to read this year. I haven't read anything in the last 3 years. She got 2-1. So, you know, it can be done. Do not follow her example, right? Because how, unfortunately this is going to be recorded, but who she paid for that degree, I have no idea. It wasn't me, that's for sure. Okay, you cannot write if you can't read. It kind of sounds like primary school stuff, but there's a truth to it. The people who write the best in any given assignment, I don't care what form that assignment takes, are clearly the people who have read the most. And it's not the amount of reading which is the important factor here. It's not the fact that they might have more knowledge or more examples to use or more references to use. Those are all incidental. The truth of it is that you write better when you read more because you are exposed to the correct form of language and address that we expect in academic writing, the more you read of it. This is why I give you things to read. Because it's not just about improving your knowledge, it is also about improving your discipline with regards to what you're reading and how then that feeds back into how you write things as well. So the more people, the people who read the most, it's a one-to-one correlation, are the best writers. The best writers almost invariably get the highest marks. It's just a given. So if you're not somebody who has read much before this degree, that's fine. There's a lot of disciplines to get into this degree, and not a lot of them encourage you to read. In order to perform as well as you can, you do have to get into the habit of reading. But here's the kicker, right? You don't have to read everything. As important as reading is reading with a purpose and reading with skill. There is a skill to reading as a student. It took me a long time to learn this. Right? When I was an undergraduate student, I used to divide up my time between three things. Occasionally coming to lectures, reading the stuff in the module handbook, because that was important, and getting pissed. And I'll be honest with you, the third one took up the vast amount of my energy and time. The second one, I used to do wrong. I'd get book suggestions from lecturers, from the module handbook, etc. And I would sit and I would literally plough through the whole thing. Not a bad training for going on to be a PhD student and, you know, a doctor and what have you. Actually, that probably served me well. But it was only when I started doing a PhD that I really cottoned on to the idea, I don't need to read all of this. I already know some of it. Therefore, I can read for the purpose of improving my knowledge on a particular topic. The stuff I already know, why would I read it again? What's the purpose of that? What am I improving here? So I've given you a course textbook on Canvas. Some of you, to a greater or lesser extent, will know the material in that book. You might have done Media A level, you might have done Media BTEC, you might have done Sociology, you might have done Psych, for example. You will know parts of that book already. You will read and think, oh yeah, I learned about that in the past. Well, don't waste your time. If you know that stuff already, don't worry about it too much. Give yourself a refresher maybe, but skim it. You don't have to go nuts and try and read every word. If this is stuff that I've already talked about in the lecture and you're good with that, move on. Find out what the stuff is around that you don't know. Be judicious with what you actually read, because your time is not infinite. You know, you have 3 modules to do. You have a whole bunch of other stuff going on. Recognise that your time is actually precious and not, you don't have endless amounts of it, and use it accordingly. This is actually a skill which is really hard for people to learn, I think. Because the temptation is, oh yeah, I've got to read all of this stuff, and it's really hard to break those chains. But I'm here telling you now, you don't have to. At the end of this, I'm going to go through assignment 2 with you. I don't know if any of you have looked at that yet or read it. It is a long bitch-ass chapter, 30 odd pages, 9,000 odd words. At the end of this, you won't have to read all of it. Okay? But also, what you'll note is, for quite a few of you in this room, you'll already know some of it. And therefore, will you need to reread it? I very much doubt it. Now, it's a really useful chapter in terms of the history of media studies, and I think everyone will benefit from reading it, but Do you have to read every word of it to get the meaning of the whole chapter? Don't think you do. And if you take this approach, then you can make this mountain seem a lot smaller. Always be asking these questions when you're given something, when you're thinking about reading for assignments. Is what you've got relevant? First thing you ask. Look at the thing in your hand and think, is this going to be relevant to the thing I've got to answer? If it's no, throw the damn thing away. What's the point? Stop wasting your time. First thing, do the initial shuffle straight away. Does it help build an argument? Well, you won't know until you've actually started reading. But you can tell real fast whether it's going to be helpful. First couple of paragraphs usually will tell you whether this thing is relevant to what you are trying to do. If after a few paragraphs you think this ain't going in my way, throw it away. It's not useful. Some people think, because you've gone to the effort of reading something, you've got to use it. It don't work like that, I'm afraid. If it's shit, it's still shit, alright? It doesn't work that way. Is it any different from anything else you've read? If it's not, throw it away. Why are you bothering? You're just wasting your time. Go find something else which is interesting and useful. If it's not adding, but it's taken away in terms of the time and effort that you're using to consume it. Why did the author write this? You think you should ask that question? Hell yeah! That is a really, really important question. Why did the author write this? You might think, why is that important? Has anyone got any ideas? No? Superb.
They've written it for someone at a different level, so A level, so it is useful.
I could not have answered that question any better myself. They might have written it for a completely different purpose. It's not just the potential audience, like it could be written for GCSE students. Right, this happens every year, right, so let's stamp on this now. Anyone who references a blog by a GCSE media lecturer in an essay, I'm going to curb stomp you. GCSE for a fucking reason, okay? So don't. That answer's superb. It could be written for a different audience, which means it's written for a different purpose, which means it has a different pitch. In academic books themselves, that is also important. Think about the purpose why this has been written. If you're doing a film studies essay, and you see something in a book which ain't about film studies, then what the information in that is not purposeful for what you are addressing at that point in time. That's not to say it's entirely irrelevant, but the purpose of why it's been written and why it's been positioned that way is going to be different. Therefore, I would question its utility at that point. Find something instead which is related to the topic that you're doing. Not so much of a problem in this module, which is a general media studies theory module. Most media studies books will be appropriate for this. But as you go into specialism and things, always be asking that question because it's important. Why has this been done? It's something we don't ask. It's something I ask all the time. And it does help direct what I'm trying to read. Do you agree? It's a fundamental question. You are not kids. Okay? Everyone in this room can vote. Everyone in this room can join the army. Everyone in this room can get married. Everyone in this room can consume alcohol. You're not children. Ask yourself a question, which is an adult question. Do you agree with what this person is saying? That is a fundamental question to ask. Only read for understanding. When you're doing academic work, the key purpose is, I am here to improve my understanding. If you're one of these weird people who reads academic stuff for leisure, good on you. I've got a lot of respect for you because you are keeping corners and curves on your extreme psychopathic tendencies at that point, and that is nice, you know. you are probably only one step away from like killing yourself in a masturbation incident with a plastic bag over your head. But you are keeping away from that, and I applaud you. Reading for understanding is how you get good at this. So, always ask, what are they saying? Can you paraphrase it? And can you map that idea in a particular way? Break it down all the time. That's how you understand what is being written. If you can't answer the first question, and this does happen, all right? This happens to me. I'll be quite honest with you. There's critical theorists that I probably should engage with their ideas. If I look at like what they're reading, I literally can't understand what they're saying. What's the point? I just don't bother. If they're that bad at writing in the first place, their ideas are probably not going to be that worthwhile anyway. If you've got to hide your ideas behind absolute nonsense, what's the point? That's a good tip to have. If you can't understand what that thing is saying, ditch it. Find something else on that topic. Don't persevere with stuff that is so badly composed that it's hard for you to actually gain an understanding of it. You can all read, right? You've all got the baseline here. Can you paraphrase or summarize the main idea? That is incredibly important. Can you break it down? If you can, brilliant. If you can't, this might not be fit for purpose for what you're trying to do. And you are enabled to make these judgment calls. If you can find stuff that you think, yeah, this is good, if you can find a particular author or a particular set of books or a particular set of materials that allow you to do this consistently, great. That's pay dirt. That's amazing. Don't persevere with stuff that you find that it's impossible to do because you're not helping. Can you map that idea? Idea mapping of this kind I'll get to at the end of this lecture, but it is also very, very important. Always be asking those two things. I know I'm repeating myself. Breaking it down again is not a bad idea. How does this thing relate to my title or my argument? Because some essays you get, there won't be titles. If you're going to do social media with me in year 2, I don't give you an essay title. Okay? I get you to do a project first of all, and then I get you to do a critical evaluation of that project as an essay. There is no title itself, so you'll be looking at material around social media, theory around social media, and you'll always be asking, is that relevant to what I did in my project? Is that relevant to the findings I got from the project I did for part 1? Always be asking about relevance. I mean, listen, you ain't off banging this drum. Well, yeah, I am, because the weaker essays that you get in year 1 tend to be people have found something and it's not really relevant to what they're doing, but they're using it anyway because they put the effort into like that one thing and it's not relevant. It doesn't add anything. So even if like they're referencing it correct, it's like, yeah, but this isn't adding anything to what you're trying to do here. So those questions are fundamental. Too often you see people actually blow up because they're not really using stuff which is important. Reading for analysis, higher level skills. What's the main argument being made and how is it backed up? That's the key. When you're reading for analytic skills, always be asking yourself, what is this person arguing and how have they got to that conclusion? Very high level skill, what isn't being said? What is being left out? Is there any other approach or any other way of thinking about this which this person is not considering? That is right up there. People who articulate that kind of thing in essays, oh yeah, you're impressing me now. Now I'm starting to look at like, is this in the 70s or the 80s? When you're able to pick out the stuff that isn't being said, nice. That is superb. Always think about what method somebody used to get to their argument, to their conclusions, and how this really feeds back into that point. how is this related to any other material that you read or know about this topic? When you're reading in that way, you're reading at the top level. You're doing your academic reading in a way that's going to feed high marks. So if you're asking those questions, if you have, anytime you're making a summary, anytime you're making notes on something, anytime you're preparing for assignment, you have those things, you're going to do well. You're already setting yourself up. At the very point before you even committed one word to a page, you're already operating at the highest levels possible. Additional things that people don't often ask but can be asked. Do you agree with the author's point of view? You're paying a hell of a lot of money for this. You're allowed not to agree. Right? That's really important. Which arguments are convincing and why? People often don't ask these questions. I'll ask you stuff in January about specific arguments. Very often, like the McLuhan question, people don't really answer whether this is a convincing argument. It's kind of important that you have an opinion on it. Where do arguments fall down? What's the flaws in them? Now, throughout most of media studies as a degree, you're going to be engaging with theory. There is no such thing as a correct theory. There are theories which work to explain phenomena, and they explain some phenomena very well, and they don't explain other things very well. That's the nature of what theory is. It is a set of ideas. These have not been passed down on stone tablets from a mountain. They are ideas. I am a theoretician. I come up with theories. Some people think my theories are complete bullshit. They're allowed to have their opinion. I think that if I met them on a Saturday night, they wouldn't have any teeth left, bitching me down. I'm also willing to accept I propose theories. I think these theories work in particular contexts. I don't think they work to explain everything. I would never be so bold. Theory works in specific ways and doesn't work in other ways. And even for the phenomena that you are looking at, I can guarantee there are other theoretical ways of explaining that thing. There is no such thing as something which works all the time, or is infallible to other ideas. So always be thinking, does this actually work? And that's where you compare with other people on this topic. And always think about the consequences of that analysis. What does it actually mean for us? If that analysis is correct, what does that mean? There is always an end point here, which people sometimes never get to. You just stop. You think, McLuhan explains how mediums transform the way that we understand society. Well, what does that mean? People never go on to explain. You know? That's why I kind of add the let in second to do this in reference to two mediums. Because at least then I'm filling in the gap for you. You have to go forward and explain exactly what that means and concretize it in different ways. But I still need you to do a conclusion that drops that off. To read efficiently for your assignments, identify your keywords, then start scanning titles, chapter headings, contents, and index pages of stuff. This, my friends, is the most important thing. When you come to do your essay for me in January, first thing you should look at in any reading stuff you've got and all those recommended things I've given you, go to the index. Turn to that back of the book, not the beginning. Look up the keywords that you have from your essay and go straight there. That's how you're efficient. Sometimes you're like, shit, this book is like that. How am I? Use the shortcuts that the book's already given you. It's given you an index. If you're using an ebook, which a lot of you will, shortcut. Control plus F brings up a search button. You type in the keyword you're looking for, it will take you to every instance of that keyword in the book. Control F. is your friend. It's the best friend you're going to have in the next 3 years. Let me tell you, it takes you exactly where you need to go. So that 300-page textbook on Canvas, you can cut it down to 5-6 pages of only relevant stuff. Just you have to know how to look. Skim stuff. Skim the chapter introduction to know whether it's relevant. Look at the headings of paragraphs. Look at the summaries that each textbook gives you. They're all there. All the help is in them. Always look at the conclusion of a chapter, because that tells you whether the rest of it's worth reading. That's the best way to find out. Speed read it. Flick through. Get used to skimming over. You'll get good at it. Some of you are already good at it. And then you read the detail. Once you know you're in the right place and it's got the right stuff, then you get into it and start taking the detail out that you can use. But do all these things first. And when you get this, this is a practice thing. You've got to keep on doing this. You will develop a skill set for reading. Those of you who don't read and have no intention of reading will never develop this. And when you get to year 3, you're fucked. Because you don't know how, you will not know how to do this. The reading gets ramped up year on year. First year you're in college, second year you've got more, third year you're going to be swamped. Make no apologies for that, that's how it works. If you don't start being smart with it now, you'll never be smart with it in year 3, and then when the marks actually matter, you never get there. Okay, these are my tips. You don't have to read everything. You do not have to read the whole chapter. You certainly never have to read the whole book. Sometimes I don't even read the whole page. Why would I? It's got what I need, take it out, cast it aside. Never have to look at it again, after I've taken the reference down. You do not have to do everything. This is supposed to be a group activity. I don't know. How are we going to do this? Can you all read these? The basic reading comprehension thing. Taking notes. Hands up who thinks underlining is the most useful thing you can do. Ooh, more controversial. What about notes in the margin? Oh, we got a couple. Good. I'm liking it. Highlighting. One taker for highlighting. Summaries. Now we're starting to hit poo dirt. Okay. Post-it notes. Anyone a fan of using post-it notes? Well, that's my method. Does me okay. Okay. Interesting that nobody thinks underlining and highlighting are the most useful things, because they are the most commonly done things by everyone. When I look at like student stuff, and they come from meetings and stuff with textbooks that they bought, loads and loads of green or yellow bits in the textbook. First thing I think is you haven't read it. The reading of something is almost inversely proportional to the amount of highlighting that somebody's done. Somebody's highlighted lots, I know they haven't read it. Somebody's highlighted a little, I know they've read it and picked out the important thing, and not just covered their page. Because highlighting is not even fun anymore. Like when I was a kid, those highlighter pens had solvents in them, so the more you used them, the more you were tripping. They're water-based now. It's shit. Believe me, I have jammed them up my nose to try and get this, and it does not work. Right? So, same as Tipp-Ex. Right? When we were in school, Tipp-Ex was the beast, but now it's crap. And I need solvent abuse because my job's really boring. So this. There are active ways of doing things and there are passive ways of doing things. Active ways would be notes in margins, post-it notes and summarising. Active, good. Passive, highlighting, underlining, or simply doing nothing, bad. active learning is completely different to passive learning. Being active and doing an activity alongside your reading consolidates the knowledge that you are reading at that point in time. It is incredibly important. Simply highlighting or underlining things is a total waste of everyone's time as far as I'm concerned. The only time highlighting is good is when you are using it to go back and make notes. Now I will give that, I will say that that is an effective way of doing things. And what I do is I get these small little post-it strips from reading a book. I leave them in the parts where I go back to afterwards, and then I make my notes on the entire book when I'm finished reading it. Because I don't like my flow to be broken by reading, when I'm reading something, by taking notes sometimes. It's just my personal way of doing things. Not the right way, it's just the way that I decide to work. There are different techniques that you can use for taking notes, like a linear method of using headings and subheadings, like a pattern method. You call it a scattergram, call it a mind map, anything you want to call it. The Zettel-Kasten method, notes on separate cards. That sounds like a lot of work to me, but I know it is something that people like to do. Progressive summarization, separating reading into different stages and getting notes. Again, that sounds like people who are way more organized than me. Most people will use one of the two top methods. Either you will use a linear method of doing this, or you will use a pattern method. Interestingly, in January, I'm asking you to do an essay with an essay plan. You will have to produce something like this. It says in the handbook that you have to do a 500-word essay plan. One, if it's 200 words, okay. As long as the plan is visible and it matches up to what you've done and it's a good thing, I'm going to give you good marks for it. If it's a drawing, good on you. I'm happy with that. Now that's not going to be 500 words, but if that's the way you want to do it, that's the way you do it. Last couple of years, people have got really good marks by doing like a mind map, taking a photo of it, and copying and pasting the photo into the Word document and then submitting that. Great. I'm more than happy with that. What I want to see is that you've actually planned. I'm not really marking the plan in terms of, you know, how beautiful it looks, or, you know, did you use different colours? You know, I don't give a shit about anything like that. I want to see that you thought about what you're actually doing and it makes sense. So, play around with these ways of doing things, but I suspect you all have a preferred style already. There's two issues with that. One, your preferred style might not be something that works for you. It's just something that you've done. In which case, if you feel like